Welcome back to Panda Pen Club. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Duke 2009 Charlie Chaplin commemorative fountain pen. The box the pen comes in reflects the brand with some sort of perhaps ducal coronation, if such things are something that happens. Inside the box there is a splendiferous Joan Collins-sized eyeglass case style, pleatherish snakeskin, crocodile skin, some evil creature skin case with a definite feeling of quality and import, which immediately tells you, oh, a pen the manufacturer has invested in. Now, does it live up to that? Well, it most certainly does, and I'm going to tell you why. This pen is black lacquer on metal, 130 millimeters long, capped as you see it now. Quite a heavyweight pen. Now, this weight is worth emphasizing. Let's see which one of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 fountain pens is the heaviest. Capped and uncapped, because this is just a quick experiment. Some of these pens are inked, some aren't, which is obviously going to affect the weight somewhat. The Duke Charlie Chaplin commemoration pen is 77 grams capped and 38 grams uncapped. That places its capped weight in second place, second out of 10 heaviest in today's rundown, and uncapped, its weight is third heaviest. Not the heaviest, but certainly as a proportion of length, one of the heavier ones out there. And later on in this review, I'm going to tell you why it's not the part of the first impression that you should focus on. Even if you have wrist pain or if you plain old don't like heavy writing instruments, I'm going to tell you why this pen may well indeed be something of a dream for you to write with. The shape is the second part of the first impression that recalls one Sir Charles Chaplin. Why is that? Chaplin's most famous character is known as the Tramp. The Tramp endured through a great many of his films. It was the character that put Chaplin on a level of celebrity that maybe I would compare to Lady Gaga. And I say her in particular because she seems to get mobbed everywhere she goes, and Chaplin was that kind of celebrity mobs everywhere he went. He was iconic, he was obsessed over, he was adored. And all of that came through this miracle of a character, which emerged very early in his career during the 1914 film Mabel's Strange Predicament, as he assembled the ingredients for the Tramp's iconic outfit. And he said himself, I'm going to read from his autobiography, I wanted everything to be a contradiction. The pants baggy, the coat tight, the hat small, and the shoes large. I had no idea of the character, but the moment I was dressed, the clothes and the makeup made me feel the person he was. I began to know him, and by the time I walked on stage, he was fully born. If you look at the silhouette of the Tramp in the closing sequence of the 1936 film Modern Times, and you watch that sequence up against this pen, and you pay careful attention to the silhouette of both, you'll immediately see that they both share sort of avocado physique, a sort of big bottomed bulge. This bulge and the ergonomics of this pen in general are a really important part of why I think this is a fantastic fountain pen. First off though, the not so ponderous, not so heavyweight matter of pricing. This pen cost me RMB 92, which is about £10.65 or $12.95, something like that. Now, Chaplin's character, the Tramp, was beloved because he was the representative of all the little men and women of the world. And this pen, similarly, has a lot of bang for your buck. Big, wonderful things with unassuming, prosaic kind of indication seems to me to be very, very Charlie Chaplin, because he believed in people. At the end of his movie The Dictator, for example, he comes out of character as a Jewish barber and he makes a speech to the audience. You, the people, have the power to make this life a wonderful adventure. This was a guy who grew up in Victorian poverty with alcoholic parents with deep mental health problems, and he emerged with a love of people. He believed in people, and to me that is very encouraging. This pen feels really well made, and I think that's exemplified well in the capping, the uncapping, the posting. Everything seems crisp, somewhat obsessive, especially at this price point. Now, I have seen mention of the cap coming loose in some online reviews. I've also seen mention of the cap being so tight that it sucks ink out of the nib when it's uncapped. Sort of contradictory problems people are facing. I can certainly see why both, particularly the cap coming loose, would be a problem. The cap coming loose would mean it's falling off and it's a heavy, almost murderous object So you don't want that. I have not experienced that problem in quite some time using this pen. There are just these great sounds involved. It's a lovely pop when you uncap. There's a multi-stage frictional process of capping which concludes in a lovely snap, which seems very definitive. Posting the pen has been thought about and is clearly an option. You get this lovely thunk of the cap coming into place on the end of the pen. I wouldn't, however, recommend writing with it posted. Somewhat unwieldy. There is one area where the impression of quality falls down, and you may have noticed it already from me slinging this around all over the place. That little bell-like rattle. That is the converter knocking against the inner workings of the shaft. Now, you may have noticed that took me quite a long time to unscrew there. That's a no less than 10 turns. The thickness of the shaft, that makes me think of Antioch or something like that. Laying siege to this pen would take quite some time, I would think. Inside you have this lovely converter, which fits very much with the aesthetic of the pen itself. It is, however, very rattly. You get this little bell-like complaint as it taps against the interior of the shaft. Some people might find that problematic. I find that slightly problematic, something of a shame. But despite the fact that it's tacitly acknowledged by whoever sold me this pen, they supplied it with another converter, I've not felt the need to use that converter at all because there's more to this pen than that. The way the ergonomics of this pen interact with its weight and make a lovely writing experience, a lovely unexpected writing experience, are, for me, probably the focal point of this pen. However, there's one more question. This pen is a tribute. It's thoroughly thought through and it reflects a high regard. But that raises one key question for me that needs to be answered before I get onto the writing experience, and that is, why is a Chinese pen manufacturer making a tribute to an English comedian from the first half of the 20th century? Chaplin had an outsized impact everywhere he went in the world, and that included China. 29 Chaplin films were shown in China between 1919 and 1924. One studio in Shanghai, Ming Xing, produced a tribute to him in 1922, which was called The King of Comedy Visits Shanghai. And although Chaplin considered moving to China in 1932 and clearly felt a special affinity with the country, he only actually ever visited once. But China frequently came to him. He was very interested in Chinese opera, for example. Likewise, in 1954, the Chinese leader Zhou Enlai had dinner with Chaplin in Switzerland, and they drank Mutai, which is the most prestigious brand of baijiu, which is a spirit, an extremely potent spirit made from rice, which Chaplin referred to as Chinese champagne. And there's even a statue of them both outside the Liquor Museum in the small town of Maotai, where Mutai baijiu is produced. Now, the reason he was living in Switzerland in 1954 was because in 1952, his re-entry permit to the United States was revoked, rather rudely, the night after he left on a boat from New York to go to the premiere of his film Limelight in London. And he took, as you might, a degree of offence to this. And although he probably could have returned, he just needed to submit to an interview, he did not. And this is because he was a target of the notorious House Un-American Activities Committee, and as far back as 1947, so 5 years before his permit was revoked, Representative John E. Rankin, who co-founded the Un-American Activities Committee, said he should be deported and gotten rid of at once. And the reason he became increasingly a target was, well, there was a degree of naked politics in his films, albeit in a kind of slapstick overcoat. For example, in his film Modern Times, the 1936 film, there's a scene where he's emerged from mental asylum, where he's been because his factory job is causing him problems. He doesn't know what's going on in the world. A flatbed lorry with a flag on the back drives past. The film conveys quite fluently, despite the fact it's black and white, that this is a red flag. It falls off the back of the truck. Chaplin gamely picks it up and waves it to try and give it back. Behind him, a huge crowd of protesters appears from the factory where he works. So he's running down the road waving a flag with a load of protesters behind him, and he's immediately arrested. So is this why he's so popular in China? Because he had a somewhat adversarial relationship with the US? I can see why it would be very straightforward to say so at this moment in our history. But I think there are deeper, more universal reasons why Chaplin is so popular in the US and China. And they go beyond the man, beyond his specific experiences. Things change. Political climates alter, and they can do so very quickly. Things can change on a dime. In 1972, Chaplin was awarded an honorary Oscar. He received another in 1973. In 1978, the People's Daily newspaper gave him the official seal of approval in China as well. It spoke of the deep ideological and social meaning of his films, and it also spoke of his profound compassion for oppressed humanity. I think the reasons Chaplin is loved in China are the same as the reasons he's loved anywhere else. I think it's well put by an article from the Daily newspaper in 2014, where Chaplin was ranked number 4 in movie stars beloved in China. In the 20th century, it's not too much to say that Einstein made the greatest contributions to science, and not many would disagree that Chaplin did the same for film. He was the first actor that introduced comedy to Chinese viewers. His silent films broke the barrier of language, and his form of art was recognized by all. It would be difficult to find a person in China who does not recognize Chaplin, even now. The Russian filmmaker Sergei Eisenstein said, "I wish I knew what eyes you had to look at the world through to see it as Chaplin did." And this pen reflects something Chaplin saw in life that we can all empathize with, and that is everything is a contradiction. The unlikely and preposterous elegance of Chaplin, his ability to communicate so expertly through movement and expression, were vital to his success, and I really credit this pen with something similar. It's heavy and cumbersome, and yet it works fluently and beautifully across the page, and I'm going to show you why in the writing sample. Duke, 2009. Charlie Chaplin tribute pen. And I'm writing with Lamy ink. And I'm writing on a Muji A5 notepad, because I'm a big fan of Muji A5 notepads. This pen, the ink flow, it's dependable, it's steady. I wouldn't call it dry, I wouldn't call it voluptuously wet either. And that really isn't a problem so much as an observation. It is an absolute joy to write with. There's something about the way the pen merges with gravity. It does not feel like a heavy writing instrument. Lovely panda seeks jinxed zebra for quick game of whist. The weight actually provides such a downward thrust from the pen that it aids your writing. I'm not so much writing with this pen as guiding it, or all the force you need to use this pen, or most of it. And you are really guiding this pen. The bulge I mentioned, the ergonomic bulge, this extraordinary outward shape here, this convexity. It's a really good spot to rest your thumb on and to nudgingly guide the pen. I don't have many fountain pens that write like this. Something to do with the weight and the shape of the pen combined to make it a really, really excellent writer. It's a sensual writing experience, this pen. You are guiding the pen across the page. You are working with the pen. The section is very short, but that's really no problem. Your fingers rest up against this little ledge on the front of the section, and most of the work is done by the thumb and the place where it intersects with the bulge in the center of the pen. It's a really compelling and interesting pen to use. I use it a lot, and I recommend it highly to you as a pen that gives a quality impression, is unique and interesting, carries a connection to a really special cultural icon, and is just a wonderful writing experience that will be different from most other pens in your collection. If you've enjoyed watching this review, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Panda Pen Club on YouTube. And when you click that subscribe button, please click the bell as well. It really helps us. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. The clip is subtle. There's certainly design to it. There's certainly thought that's gone into this shape. It doesn't trigger many of my clip prejudices because there is not too much, in fact, there is almost no concavity underneath, and it clips very easily indeed.